The First Battle of Saratoga was a pretty classic demonstration of the advantages and disadvantages offered by the use of rifles in 18th century combat. The British soldiers that Edward Haymond and the rest of Morgan's riflemen faced at Freeman's Farm were primarily armed with muskets, and so could both fire more rapidly and perform bayonet charges. From their position in the trees, however, and some of them literally climbed into trees to fire down on the British, the riflemen could pick off enemy soldiers as they approached from the north. Morgan's men were particularly fond of targeting British officers, and the British soldier Roger Lamb wrote in his journal that, as often as they could distinguish a British officer's uniform, the riflemen took him off by deliberately aiming at his person. It must have been a terrifying experience, especially because of what physics did to an 18th century musket ball. Bullets now have a lead core but are covered with a thin layer of stronger metal like steel or copper alloy and fire at a much faster speed than 18th century weapons were capable of. So, modern bullet wounds tend to be smaller in comparison, and the bullet itself has a chance of passing through a person's entire body if it doesn't meet too much resistance. Musket balls, on the other hand, were made entirely of soft lead, meaning that as they traveled forward, the centrifugal force placed on them made them expand. The farther they went, the bigger they got, and if a wound from a musket ball was larger than one made by a modern gun, one from a rifle with a slightly longer range was just a little bit bigger, a little bit more gory, and a little bit more horrifying to witness. Still, the British held strong and took advantage of their opponents' longer loading times to charge them with bayonets. Because they didn't have bayonets of their own, Morgan's riflemen had to rely on Dearborn's men and the reinforcements from Arnold to help them push back the enemy. They spent most of the day with the battle playing out like this, with Morgan's marksmen picking off British soldiers in between multiple bayonet charges and the rest of the rebel forces keeping them from being wiped out. That's not to say that the Rifle Corps didn't participate in hand-to-hand combat. When the rebels fought off the British charges, the riflemen were right there with them, advancing in two lines with Morgan at the back to, in Morgan's own words, make sure the cowards did not lag behind. At several points during the battle, Morgan's men were able to advance far enough to seize British cannons, but lacked the matches necessary to light the cannons' fuses and fire them, and so were unable to turn them on the enemy. In one of these moments, Edward Haymond's captain, Van Swearingen, was captured. According to Roger Lamb, Swearingen was being attacked by a group of Indians when a British soldier intervened and took him to his commander for interrogation. The commander, General Simon Fraser, threatened to hang Swearingen if he didn't give him information about the rebel positions. Swearingen refused, and Fraser caved, allowing him to live and receive medical care. Edward was luckier than his captain, if you want to call it that. The Rifle Corps had been scattered across the battlefield on multiple occasions throughout the day, so much so that, according to Horatio Gates's aide, Major James Wilkinson, who later turned out to be a spy for the Spanish Empire, Morgan was almost in tears when he reached him at the front. When Morgan saw Wilkinson approaching, he told him, "I am ruined, by God, and my men are scattered God knows where." With the use of a turkey call, however, Morgan was able to bring his men back to him again and again, and continue fighting throughout the day. There's no way to know where Edward Haymond ended up on the battlefield at different points during the day, but it could very well have been that turkey call that brought him back, and helped him and the rest of the Rifle Corps survive the battle. So, at the end of the First Battle of Saratoga, Edward Haymond remained alive and, unlike his captain, a free man. He remained with the Rifle Corps for the rest of the campaign and saw action in the Second Battle of Saratoga on October 7th.